Well, good morning and hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Evan Wright. I'm the Director of EVI Programs here at the Center for Sustainable Energy, or CSE. CSE is the implementer of the California Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Project, also known as CALeVIP, which is funded by the California Energy Commission. And speaking for all of us, we're excited to provide you with details about our latest and largest project funding opportunity, known as the Fast Charge California Project. So for introductions, I'm joined by a fantastic team of experts who will provide critical project information as well as answer any questions that you may have. Avin is our EVI, EVSE technical expert. Bailey is our program manager. And on the Q&A panel, we have Brian Fauble from the Energy Commission, who is the Commission Agreement Manager for CALeVIP 1.0 and 2.0, as well as Fidel, a Senior Manager and EVI, EVSE technical expert here at CSE. For the agenda, we'll be covering the following. What is the Fast Charge California project? We'll talk about the differences between the Golden State Priority Project and the Fast Charge California project. We'll cover eligibility requirements, ready to build documentation, equipment and network requirements, application selection process, project timeline and deadlines, next steps, and then we'll save about 45 minutes at the end for Q&A. So we'll be covering a lot during this webinar, and as questions come up, please type them in the panel on the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar player, and be sure to identify the organization you are representing. And we encourage folks not to use the hand raise function throughout the presentation. Also, it may be beneficial to hold your questions until the end, as we are covering a lot of material in this presentation, and your questions may be answered along the way. So we'll be logging and aggregating all the questions to make sure we answer them during the Q&A session following the presentation. If you have very specific site or application related questions that don't really apply to the entire audience, please email us and we'll be sure to get you the information that you need. Also, this presentation will be posted on our website under the FCCP resources section, along with a recording of the webinar. So we'll start with the big picture. This is a massive DC fast charging funding opportunity with $55 million in state funding allocated for incentives. It's the largest incentive project in CALeVIP history. And for the first time, incentives can cover up to 100% of total approved project costs, capped at $100,000 per charging port. Also new, there are no geographic limitations. This project is open to the entire state of California. And we really wanted to give you plenty of time to put together your best projects, so the application window opens on July 8th and closes on September 30th. Applications will be processed on a rolling first come, first served basis. And something new as well, we do have applicant caps in FCCP where no single incentive recipient can have over 35% of FCCP funding reserved, and no incentive recipient can have over 50 active applications across CALeVIP 1.0, 2.0, and communities in charge. And generally, an active application is an application where chargers are not officially energized yet. And this project is open to eligible electric vehicle network providers, service providers, and site and property owners. And we're really focused on rapid charger deployment to support the state's zero emission vehicle goals. To drill down on a few key details about who is eligible for this funding, again, this project is open across the whole state. Disadvantaged communities and low-income communities are not required, but if applicants are in a DAC or LIC or tribal territory and their applications meet the ready-to-build requirements, they will be prioritized for funding. This project is for ready-to-build applications only, and we'll get into more details in a few minutes, but ready to build means that applicants have an issued permit for the proposed installation and a final utility service design, or an official letter from the utility that no new or upgraded service is necessary at the time of application. And this project is for DC fast chargers only, and the sites must be publicly available. I know some of you are familiar with past DC fast charging funding opportunities, the Golden State Priority Project 1 and 2. So we wanted to make clear what some of the differences are between GSPP and this new project. So again, FCCP is open to the entire state of California. GSPP 1 and GSPP 2 rebates were only available for sites located in a DAC, LIC, or tribal lands. In FCCP, there are no restrictions. However, DAC, LIC, and tribal land applications will receive priority processing. The power output requirements for chargers remain the same. The percentage of reimbursable costs is way up, so from 50% in GSPP up to 100% in FCCP. And we had 4 readiness tiers in the past, and now we're prioritizing rapid deployment. In other words, getting fast chargers in the ground fast, and that's why we are only accepting applications with a permit and utility design, also known as a Tier 1 application. Incentive stacking had previously been allowed and will generally no longer be allowed, with a few minor exceptions, which we'll cover later on in the presentation. We use a tiering and ranking system in GSPP after the application windows close as we move folks into funds reserved. In FCCP, Tier 1 are the only applications we will accept, and we have a rolling first come, first served window. And lastly, there were no applicant caps previously, and now, as mentioned, no single incentive recipient can have over 35% of FCCP funding or over 50 active applications across CALeVIP 1.0, 2.0, and communities in charge. So those are the highlights. I hope you are as excited about this new opportunity as we are. And before I hand it over to Bailey to dig deeper into the applicant and site requirements, we wanted to hear from you. Here's our first poll question of the day. How many sites are you planning on applying for? Please click the best answer that applies to you, and we'll give you about 15 or 20 seconds to respond. All right, and we will move along. I'll pass it off to, okay, the results are in. So it looks like majority of folks are looking at 1 to 5 sites. Appreciate the feedback, and I will pass it over to Bailey.
Thank you, Evan. I'm CSE Program Manager Bailey Muller. I'm going to be covering 6 topics today: applicant eligibility requirements, site eligibility, labor requirements, more on what is meant to be ready to build, eligible costs, and incentive stacking. Let's start with who is eligible to apply for the Fast Charge California project. Applicants must be an authorized representative of a commercial or public facility installation site and will need to certify via site verification form submitted with the application that they are either the site owner or their authorized agent. Applicants must represent a business, sole proprietorship, nonprofit organization, California Native American tribe, or a public entity based in California, or operate as a California-based affiliate. Finally, applicants must also establish there are no threatened or actual legal actions against them that could impact the completion or operation of the proposed installation or disbursement of the reserved incentive funds. The incentive recipient must accept the incentive directly and must be the entity incurring and paying for all proposed installation costs. The incentive recipient is not required to be the same as the applicant, but it is the incentive recipient that is ultimately responsible for ensuring all program requirements are adhered to. However, the applicant retains responsibility for all communication with CALeVIP via our application portal. The CEC and/or CSE may exclude certain entities from participating in FCCP for the following reasons: non-compliance with applicable laws or violations of CALeVIP 2.0 or other CEC program requirements, or any previous or observed misconduct or unreasonable delays within the project period. Moving on to which sites are eligible. The installation site's address must be located within California. The site must be well lit, secure, and in compliance with all federal, state, and municipal laws and regulations. The charging station must primarily serve light-duty vehicles. For public accessibility, all sites must be publicly available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, without restrictions or limitations on availability. However, sites with a parking lot or parking garage as their primary site use have the exception to be publicly available for at least 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and excluding holidays. Additionally, no valet use or customer-only charging. It must be fully open to the public, similar to a gas station. Finally, the installation site must already be paved at the time of application. No undeveloped land will be considered. Here is a list of all the site types that are eligible to apply for FCCP. This includes parking lots and garages, community centers, medical facilities, restaurants, and retail shopping centers, among many others. For the full list of sites with their definitions, please reference our implementation manual on our website linked below. As mentioned before, installation must be at an existing structure or facility and must have negligible or no expansion of existing or former use and cannot be considered a new development. An example of this would include an installation that proposes adding bathrooms and EV chargers to an existing parking lot is eligible as long as the bathrooms are added as a separate project outside the installation of the EV chargers themselves. However, if chargers and bathrooms are being added to a new construction project on an undeveloped site, it would not be considered eligible for this project. We want to make sure you're aware of a new interactive resource we've developed on our CALeVIP website, the EV Charging Opportunity Finder. If you need help finding an optimal charging station location, you can use this interactive map to help guide your decisions. It pulls together helpful data in one place, such as EV registration data, existing charger infrastructure data, and utility service areas. For example, you can use this tool to identify areas with the highest ratio of EVs to chargers and identify gaps in infrastructure where your site could be a good use. Additionally, you can pinpoint these gaps in specific areas such as disadvantaged or low-income communities, tribal areas, utility service areas, and even census tracts. We hope you'll check it out. The URL is linked at the bottom at calevip.org/chargefinder. Regarding labor requirements, all DC fast infrastructure and equipment located on the utility customer side of the electrical meter must be installed by a licensed contractor and have at least 25% of the electricians working on the crew be EVITP certified. A signed EVITP requirements affidavit must be submitted before an incentive payment can be approved. You can get more information about this at evitp.org or contact them directly at info@evitp.org. Additionally, all work performed to complete the proposed installation must adhere to all local, state, and federal codes, permitting, and inspection requirements. This includes adherence to California prevailing wage laws for all persons working to complete the proposed installation. You've heard us emphasize that the Fast Charge California project is ready to build only. To be eligible for FCCP funding reservation, a site must be considered Tier 1 ready to build. What this means is ready to build utility requirements to include: 1, the installation site has sufficient capacity to serve the proposed installation without any new or upgraded electrical utility service, or the utility has completed a final utility service design for the proposed installation and has been agreed to by both the utility and its customer. In addition, ready to build permitting requirements include an issued permit by the corresponding authority having jurisdiction for the completion of the proposed installation, or in the case of a self-permitting agency, a letter from the agency affirming that the proposed installation meets all local, state, and federal codes, permitting, and inspection requirements. Complete documentation is required confirming status of both utility readiness and permit for the site in order to be eligible for FCCP. All of the forms mentioned, in addition to our implementation manual, are in the document library on our CALeVIP website. This timeline outlines the key steps leading to the ready to build eligibility. As you can see in the visual, applicants must complete a variety of steps for both utility readiness and permitting in order to reach eligible status for FCCP. The 2 yellow dots represent the ready to build requirements as walked through in the previous slide. As a summary of the process, first, site identification, assessment, and design take place, followed by utility feasibility studies and local permitting processes. Next, the final utility service design must be approved and the permit issued by the AHJ. Once both electrical readiness, which is sufficient capacity of the approved utility design, and permit readiness, which is the issued permit or compliance letter, are met, the site is finally funding eligible. At that point, equipment can be ordered and construction mobilization can begin as of our project window opening date of July 8th. All required forms and resources to help guide your ready to build requirements and the steps needed are available in our document library. So now let's talk about what costs are eligible here. Only the following costs paid by the incentive recipient are eligible for the project. Equipment, including DC fast charger, transformer, electrical panels and switch gears, advanced energy storage, and all-inclusive solar EV charging systems. Installation costs, including labor and materials, design, engineering, and utility service costs, signage, required ADA upgrades to site due to project installation. However, this does not include or cover needed upgrades of existing ADA non-compliance, service level and network agreements, extended OEM warranties, and any additional charging ports. Please note that costs become eligible if incurred on or after the project announcement date of January 31st, 2025. While some costs are required to be incurred by the applicant to get the site to meet ready to build status, these costs are incurred at risk by the incentive recipient and are not guaranteed for reimbursement if the project does not get funds reserved. Additionally, construction of the project proposed installation cannot begin prior to the funding window open date of July 8th, 2025. If construction is started prior to this date, all projects will be deemed ineligible. Beyond the incentive charging ports, additional charging ports and connectors may be installed on a site and will count towards the total project cost used to calculate the final incentive amount. However, the incentive cap for the installation will be determined based solely on the number of charging ports that meet eligibility and guaranteed output requirements, and any non-eligible ports installed will not count towards the full incentive calculated. The following costs are not eligible to be covered by FCCP funding. Any costs incurred prior to the project announcement date of 1/31/2025, any costs not incurred by the incentive recipient, costs not supported by sufficient proof of payment, any project costs offset by other incentive programs or projects, permit and building code compliance costs, costs associated with standalone solar panels, costs associated with developing an unpaved site or construction of new buildings or structures, and travel costs, markups, and any unpaid costs. As reiterated, while costs are eligible starting January 31st, construction cannot begin prior to the application window open date of July 8th, or all costs will be deemed ineligible. The last topic for me is incentive stacking. As Evan noted, this is different from the previous Golden State Priority projects. Applicants may not use other incentive funds to pay for project costs not covered by FCCP. This includes the following: any other CEC funding sources, any investor-owned utility EV charger programs such as Southern California Edison Charge Ready 2, any publicly owned utility programs such as Los Angeles Department of Water and Power Charger Rebate Program, and programs in Sacramento Municipal Utility District and Burbank Water and Power, any air district programs in Bay Area Air Quality Management District and San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, or any community choice aggregator charger rebate programs in Peninsula Clean Energy. While other stacking is ineligible, applicants may participate in or make use of the following in combination with FCCP funds. 1, any EVI-specific utility tariffs, example, PG&E and SCE Electric Rule 29. Use of low carbon fuel standards, LCFS credits. Example would be funds obtained from the sale of these LCFS credits or use of federal tax credits, including 30C tax credit. This concludes my slides, and so now I'll hand it over to my colleague Avin to dig into the remaining content, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. Avin?
Thank you, Bailey. My name is Avin, and I will be talking about the equipment and network requirements, application selection process, and project timeline and deadlines. After that, we will have a question and answer section led by our panelists, Brian and Fidel. First, I want to go over the charging port definitions for FCCP, as relays are awarded based on charging ports. Charging ports are defined as the number of DC fast charger connectors attached to a DCFC that can simultaneously output power into an electric vehicle. This table illustrates charging ports with two hypothetical chargers, Model A and B. Model A has a total power output of 300 kilowatts, 2 total connectors, and 2 charging ports. 2 charging port means that both connectors can charge simultaneously, so the 300 kilowatts will be split between the two, and each charging port can provide 150 kilowatts of power output. Meanwhile, Model B has a total power output of 150 kilowatts, 2 total connectors, and 1 charging port. Since only 1 connector can charge at a time, the power output per charging port is 150 kilowatts. The incentive amounts are outlined in the chart here. Projects are eligible to be rebated up to 100% of the total cost. However, will be capped at $55,000 and $100,000 per charging port for the 2 designated output levels. So for instance, if you're installing 4 charging ports with a 275 plus kilowatt output, the maximum incentive amount will be $400,000. Please note that 4 charging ports are necessary to qualify for FCCP, and the maximum rebated charging ports is 20 per application. To be eligible for this project, DCFCs must meet the following specifications: be new equipment, use a combined charging system, also known as CCS, connectors and/or CCS adapters. As a note, only CCS charging ports will be considered when determining the incentive cap. However, J3400 and CHAdeMO charging ports may be installed and will count towards the total eligible project cost. Chargers also have to be networked via Wi-Fi, Ethernet, or 4G and above cellular connection. Be capable of at least a 150 kilowatt guaranteed power output at each charging port. Be ISO 15118 hardware ready. This will be checked via self-attestation on the product specification sheet. Not require subscription or membership to dispense energy. And lastly, if payment is required, the charger must comply with all relevant laws and regulations pertaining to payment accessibility. Additionally, DCFCs must have the following certifications. Chargers need to be certified by the Open Charge Alliance to adhere with the Open Charge Point Protocol, also known as OCPP 2.0.1. At minimum, both core and advanced security profiles are required on the certificate. Be certified to Energy Star and listed on the Energy Star product finder page. Be type certified by the California Type Evaluation Program, also known as CTEP. National Type Evaluation Program certificates are also acceptable if the model is certified to a 0.0001 kilowatt-hour display resolution. Be certified by a nationally recognized testing laboratory program to either UL 2202 or UL 9741. Be registered on the eligible equipment webpage as eligible for the Fast Charge California project. Before applying, please ensure that your selected charger is listed on the eligible equipment page. If you move forward with a charger that is not on the list, you will jeopardize your funding. Equipment updates occur once or twice a month and will continue while the application window is open. DCFCs designated as out of scope by Energy Star are exempt from the Energy Star requirement if an out of scope letter from Energy Star is provided. For more information on this, you can contact evse@energystar.gov. To list a charger as eligible equipment, manufacturers must submit a completed online equipment form to CSE through the EV Charger Eligibility Portal at evchargereligibility.org. There are a few installation requirements as well, which mandate that DCFCs must be installed as follows. If they are new, they have to be installed on new EV charging infrastructure. This means that it would require, for instance, trenching, new conduit, wiring, and panels. If it is a stub-out make-ready installation, chargers need to be installed on existing EV charging infrastructure on which EVSE was not previously installed. As a note, installations seeking to replace existing EVSE, whether that is L2 or DCFC, are not eligible for FCCP. For our third poll question, we just want to know if you have confirmed that your planned choice of equipment is eligible. Okay, looks like we have a good split of people that have checked. That is great. Still a good amount of people that have not checked, and that's okay. We still have a little bit of time, but please, before you submit the application, please do check in with us and check that your equipment is eligible for FCCP. We would hate for you to jeopardize your funding that way. Next, we will be discussing the network requirements. Eligible networks must perform the following to become or remain eligible: provide network services for DCFCs at completed installations, be capable of processing payments through a toll-free number option and initiating a charging session remotely, have a signed data sharing agreement in place with CSE and/or CEC, be capable of obtaining and providing the charging session data identified in each network provider's data sharing agreement using 15-minute intervals, implement a mechanism to transfer the required data to CSE with a format and frequency that is acceptable to CSE and CEC, provide the required data on at least a quarterly basis, and comply with all regulations resulting from AB 2061 legislation. To begin the process of becoming an eligible network provider, please fill out this intake form, linked here, and send it to evcharging@energycenter.org. The California Energy Commission is in the process of finalizing the language of the regulations. See the latest on the CEC's webpage. At a high level, the CEC has proposed the following: require reliability record keeping and reporting for all state and ratepayer funded chargers installed on or after January 1st, 2024 for 6 years, require all state and ratepayer funded chargers installed on or after January 1st, 2024 to meet a 97% uptime standard for 6 years, require all publicly available state and ratepayer funded chargers installed on or after January 1st, 2024 to share real-time data on the availability and accessibility of the chargers. And lastly, require all state and ratepayer funded chargers installed on or after January 1st, 2026 to meet a 90% successful charge attempt rate standard for 6 years. Here is an overview of the application timeline. The application window opens on July 8th, 2025 and closes on September 30th, 2025. During this time, applications will be processed on a first-come, first-served basis. Between July 8th and November 17th, funding notices will be sent to applicants, and by March 14th, 2026, funding results notices will be sent to waitlist applicants. A few notes on the application process. Once an application is submitted, it cannot be edited or amended. Applications will be reviewed in order they are received, first come, first served. However, applications for sites in DAC, LIC, or tribal land will receive priority review. Priority review means that the application is reviewed ahead of all non-DAC, non-LIC, and non-tribal land applications in the review queue at the time of application. And lastly, as stated before, only applicants meeting the minimum requirements, including the ready-to-build requirement, will receive a funding reservation. If the value of the eligible applications received exceeds the funding available through FCCP 1, any eligible applications, and again Tier 1 only, without a funding reservation will remain open after the application window in a waitlist status for 165 days. Waitlisted eligible applications will receive funding reservations if reserved funding is released by another applicant or if additional funding becomes available. On March 14th, 2026, the waitlist will end and any remaining waitlist applications will receive an application cancellation notice. For more information on the program, you can find our resource documents on calevip.org/document-library. There, all FCCP-related documents are housed. You can find documents such as the implementation manual, which has all the detailed information on the program, and resource guides, such as the applicant site and eligibility guide, which gives you a checklist to ensure you are eligible. You can also find any forms that you need to fill out on here, such as the site verification form. If you have more questions regarding your application, you can take advantage of our free application assistance. We can look over your application, review documents, and answer any outstanding questions to ensure your application is ready for submittal. You can access the registration form starting March 31st using the link or QR code on this slide, or through the application assistance page on the CALeVIP website. As previously mentioned, no changes or edits are allowed once an application is submitted, so please use the application assistance ahead of time to make sure your application is ready and free of errors before submitting. For our last poll questions, we want to know if you are planning on using the available resources and/or application assistance. Okay, that's great to see. Looks like majority of people are planning on using both. Again, please do check out the resources on our website and take advantage of our free application assistance. We can help with a variety of things regarding the application. Great, and with that, I'm going to be handing it back to Evan.
Well, thank you, Avin and Bailey, for explaining some of the critical program details and requirements. Just to note, we saw a lot of questions coming in as to whether or not this recording and the deck would be available after the presentation, and it will be. It'll be on our website underneath the resources section, so please look out for that. We'll now transition to the Q&A portion of the webinar. Please continue to submit all comments and questions in the chat now. We'll take questions up until around 11:25, and then we'll close out the webinar on time at 11:30. And I will now turn the floor over to Bailey, who will facilitate the Q&A session with our panelists, and we will aim to answer all of your questions. Bailey?
Yep, thank you, Evan. Just as a little housekeeping here, we're getting quite a bit of questions in regarding the webinar itself. We will be putting up the recording of the webinar and the slides on our website, along with the rest of our resources that we have identified and referenced throughout this webinar. So we will send out an email to all of the attendees with some follow-ups after the webinar closes. But yes, you will have access to all the information that we have discussed today. So I will give this first question to Fidel regarding some ready to build questions. What's the fastest way to confirm that our parking lot meets ready to build requirement with permits and utility design by July 2025?
Thanks, Bailey. The best way would be to sign up for our application assistance. That's one of the services we're providing via the application assistance, reviewing your documentation before you submit to the portal. So please check out our homepage, calevip.org, and the application assistance webpage can be accessed via the menu at the top of that page.
Awesome. Thank you. Question for Brian here regarding eligibility and applicant caps. So how do they confirm that applications counted toward the active application cap are sites that have not yet been energized rather than those still awaiting reimbursement submission?
Yeah, so for this project, an active application is going to be defined as an application that's still in funds reserve status. So it doesn't matter if it's still energized, if you haven't been issued the final payment and closed out the application, then it's still going to be active, considered active. So this is encouraging all applicants to keep moving as quickly as possible, have your documentation ready, and submit all that documentation as quickly as possible so that you can shrink your active list.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Brian, I'll give you one more question regarding eligibility. Can a non-California-based business partner with a California-based business apply on behalf of the California-based business?
Yes, I believe the requirement is that the incentive recipient must be registered with the California Secretary of State and be in good standing. So as whoever's receiving the funds from this program must meet that requirement.
Okay. Fidel, question for you regarding eligibility. Are park and ride sites available? Eligible, I'm sorry.
No, park and ride sites are not eligible. And if you want more information on eligible sites, you can look at the implementation manual posted on the project webpage. All of this information of sites that are eligible, that are not eligible, are posted on there. And of course, if you have additional questions, please let us know.
Next question is for Brian regarding eligibility as well. Regarding valet specifically, in the event there's over 12 EV charger ports, can one or two chargers be designated for valet, or do all need to be designated for public?
Thank you. Yes, all the chargers and charging ports must be designated public and cannot split them up. So yes, all public.
Okay, Fidel, regarding equipment and network requirements. The more chargers at a site, the greater chance the diversity, meaning the chance a port is idle and unable to take full speed or switching vehicles. How can we get the right size power delivery given the minimum port current requirements remaining?
Yes, good question. So the minimum power capacity for a site is essentially 600 kilowatts because the minimum per site is 4 ports and each port must support 150 kilowatts. So you do have to provide at least that minimum power capacity. But beyond that, there is a little bit of flexibility. So for example, if you are doing a 250 kilowatt DCFC with 2 ports and the ports are split in 100 and 150 kilowatt power split, that would be allowable because one of the ports still supports the 150, but only one of those ports counts towards your minimum. So only one of those would be calculated towards the incentive cap calculation, and only one of those would be counted towards that minimum 4 by 150 kilowatt requirement for the site. So there is some room to play around there, but it is a pretty high power requirement per port.
Thank you. And regarding all the questions being asked, if there's any follow-up questions or more information needed based upon your specified question, just please reach out to our email right there, CALeVIP@energycenter.org, and we could give you more information on that question and give you additional resources and link additional resources for your specific site-related question. So please feel free to ask more advanced questions to our email linked on the slide that you see. Next question for Brian regarding eligibility requirements. For no customer only requirement, would this include required parking permits such as a daily permit but still available to the general public, particularly if a vehicle will be left unattended?
Yeah, so I don't want to give an answer to that right now. My recommendation would be to reach out to CSC after this and follow up one-on-one. If we need to do any updates in the IM, we'll put that out there, but it's kind of where I don't have a clear answer for that.
Brian, I'll stick with you for this next question regarding eligibility and timelines. It takes up to 8 months to get permits in some jurisdictions. It would take similar timelines to get utility design set. What is someone supposed to do if the anticipated timeline is longer than what they need to get the application submitted for this specific window?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll say that unfortunately that site, or if that timeline in that area is that, then it's pretty much just not going to be a good fit for this incentive project again, which is meant to be really ready to go now and fund and get operational. Again, CALeVIP is just one of the Energy Commission's multiple funding, what we call like cogs in our system. And so I recommend going to the Energy Commission's website and look under the funding opportunities, sign up for our email listservs, and see if there's a different funding opportunity that might be better suited for longer lead times. Otherwise, our goal is to hopefully have additional funding windows in the future. We can't promise that right now, as we always are waiting to see what the California budget allocates to us, but a future project might be a better situation.
Next question for Fidel. Is the rebate amount per station or per port?
Yes, the incentive amount is calculated per port that meets the minimum eligibility requirements. So as I referenced earlier, that 2-port, 250 kilowatt DCFC that does 150 on one port and 100 on the other, only one of those would meet the minimum eligibility requirements. So the incentive cap would be calculated based on the 1 port for that 1 unit.
Next question for Brian. Is there a cutoff date to withdraw applications to get under the 50 application cap max?
So the 50 application cap will be calculated at the time of processing applications. So it's not anything set in stone with a hard date. The implementation manual for this project, which was published on January 31st this year, it does state that if you have an active project in CALeVIP 2.0 from our first 2 projects, and you wanted to cancel those to move and have that same site pretty much apply for this project, you had to have withdrawn or canceled that app on March 1st, prior to March 1st, 2025. So if you still have a project right now from GSPP1 or GSPP2, you'll pretty much still need to cancel, or not cancel, you'll need to complete those projects, and those sites won't be eligible for fast charge.
Okay, and Brian, one more question for you regarding equipment and network requirements. Are there any opportunities for local agencies whose sites are not publicly accessible?
Not in this funding window under Fast Charge California, but again, there are other funding opportunities at the Commission, or we recommend visiting the Communities in Charge rebate project website. That's thecommunitiesinCharge.org. That is our level 2 rebate program that the CEC funds, and the level 2 program in the past has allowed private access. So you may be eligible for that, and recommend reaching out.
Okay, Fidel, the next question for you. Can we implement engineering to provide shovel-ready plans for installation be covered as long as we complete them prior to the application?
Yes, so engineering costs can be incurred as early as January 31st, 2025. So if the question is whether that would be included in the eligible costs, the answer is yes. And most likely that is a requirement for being able to participate, since many of the processes you have to go through with the utility and the permitting agency require at least some level of engineering or site plan design. So would encourage you to go through that as soon as possible if you're interested in participating in this program.
Next question for Brian. Are costs for security and security cameras covered? And this would mainly be to mitigate vandalism and cutting of hoses and nozzles for copper, etc.
Let me actually pass that to Fidel real quick. I mind blanking on all the eligible costs right now. Or maybe we can come back to that after I have
Yeah,
a
we can always come back to that one as well.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
We'll follow up about the vandalism. Okay, so Brian, actually Fidel, the next one, can you combine the ports such 300 and 150 together in one application?
Okay, I understand this question in two ways. One is whether you can have a 300 kilowatt dispenser and a 150 kilowatt dispenser or unit on the same application. That question is, that answer is yes, you can have both levels in the same application. If you're asking whether you could combine two 150 ports into one DCFC unit, the answer is also yes. But the calculation is based, calculation for the incentive cap is based on the output of each charging port. So do keep that in mind if you decide to do a 300 versus 150 and what may make the most sense for your specific site and situation.
Okay, Fidel, one more question for you on equipment. If we have a dual J3400 CCS1 equipment, some of the cost is due to the J3400. How is this dealt with during reimbursement?
Yeah, so each port, and we define port as being able to provide power at the same time as all the other ports. So you might have two connectors, but only one of them can actually provide power to a vehicle at a time. Those two connectors would still be single port. So if you are truly talking about two ports with simultaneous power output, both of those would be required to be CCS to be eligible. If you are okay with only one of those being eligible for the incentive calculation, the total cost of the station is still eligible to be recovered and is factored in through the submission of your final verification documentation. So you would submit the full invoice and would be eligible towards the total cost. But if at some point you meet your maximum incentive cap that we've calculated for you based on the charging ports, then that would be the max amount of incentive we would be allowed to provide for you. And if you have more questions, please reach out to us and would be happy to talk with you about it.
And then a follow up on the ports as well for you, Fidel, regarding the minimum and maximum number of ports for sites. Can the minimum and maximum number of ports count for multiple sites? So if they want to install 4, can they put 2 at one project site and 2 at another project site and still meet the minimum?
No, the application is per site and the minimum and maximum also apply per site. So if you are wanting to get incentive payment for your charging installation, it will be required to have at least a minimum of 4 on that same site.
Right. And Brian, bringing it back to you here. For the no subscription requirement, would this include something like a charge point account? And can a fee be charged to offset energy dispense costs?
Yeah, so the no subscription requirement isn't saying that you can't allow subscriptions. It's pretty much to say that you must be a subscriber and nobody else can use it. That's the requirement, that you must be able to say that anybody can have access to these chargers, even if they're not a subscriber to your specific network. So you need to be able to take people not in your network. Yes, you can charge a fee. Hardly ever see any fast chargers that are actually free of use because of the high cost. So yes, you can charge a fee, and we recommend you do it competitively still, as we don't want to price out drivers, as we want them to convert from the gas cars.
And Fidel, next question for you. Wanting to confirm that the J3400 and CHAdeMO connector types will not count towards incentive caps, but can count towards the reimbursement of the site.
That is correct.
Okay. And then Fidel, just a follow-up as well, if you could please put the link to the new EVSE models not listed in the chat, or so people can access that. That was also requested.
Sure, and this is the page for, I'm going to drop the link in here. It's the page for resources for manufacturers and network service providers, and it covers how to submit your equipment and your network for consideration in the eligible equipment list.
Okay, and this is 2 questions for Brian, kind of regarding construction. So our new city hall won't be ready for a few years. Is there a future FCCP funding round planned for chargers tied to new construction, or are there any alternative programs that don't have the new construction rule associated with it?
Sure. Yeah, so can't speak if there's going to be future rounds. Again, every project we announce is always one project at a time until we get allocated more funding. To the second part around new construction, CALeVIP 2.0 will always have this requirement, as when we got our approvals for this project, we deemed all of our projects that we would be doing as categorically exempt from CEQA because of requiring existing sites and paved parking lots. So your options would be really to go to the Energy Commission's website again, look at other funding opportunities in our grant solicitation process, as those have longer lead times typically and do not always have a requirement for existing facilities.
Okay, and then regarding that construction as well, if the project is located within a retail shopping center that is currently under construction and the parking lot will be paved, is the project not eligible?
Parking lot needs to be paved prior to submitting your application.
For Brian here again, are off-grid EV charging stations in rural areas eligible for funding? These sites would be powered by solar PV system and supported by battery energy storage systems without connection to the electrical grid.
Adele might be able to correct me, but I believe we still have a requirement as for all of our fast charger projects that these must be grid tied with the 600 kW service minimum.
Okay, And then Fidel, moving on to you. If my site has more than 20 charging ports, can I still apply for funding to cover a portion of the total project cost?
Yes, you can install more than the 20, but only the 20 would be calculated in the incentive cap. So that would be the max amount of incentive you could reserve. And then the final payment will be provided based on all of your eligible costs. So you could submit all of those and get potential reimbursement for those. But just know that that incentive cap is in place to limit that incentive payment, so we can provide payments for other sites as well.
And I'd also just add on to that anybody looking to do a large project, really anything that's over 2 megawatts or more, most utilities are going to require a large load study that can take months to over a year to complete. So if you're considering these, you definitely want to move quickly with your utility design process, as that will need to be completed before you can even start your utility design for those projects.
Okay. Moving on here to Fidel as well. Will microgrid canopy solar tier 1 options fit the program requirements?
Yeah, that sounds a little bit like the previous question that Brian answered. I think the only twist here is that the microgrid could potentially be grid tied. So I think there might be some more discussion we'd have to do there for that specific site. So please feel free to reach back out to us, and we can follow up with you and discuss the eligibility of that site.
Right. Fidel, one more for you here. Can you please confirm that trenching and excavating is considered an eligible cost?
Yes, that is correct. Both of those are considered eligible costs.
And Fidel, one more. Can you clarify first come, first served?
Yes, so as we receive applications, they will immediately go into what we're calling the review queue. So we will queue up all the applications in the order received for our processing team to review against the eligibility requirements. So that's the order that we will review them in as they come in. However, for the disadvantaged community and low-income community and tribal sites, as those come in, they do get priority review, so they do get bumped up to the top of that review queue.
Brian, one more for you regarding the California requirement. Our business is headquartered in Dallas with locations all over the US. What does the requirement based in California mean?
Don't have it right in front of me. I'd recommend following up, but again, it's pretty much, I believe the requirement is that you must be registered to do business in California, but I recommend reaching out to CSC to follow up.
Okay, and Fidel, does 150 kilowatt with 2 ports count if it charges 1 vehicle at a time with 150 kilowatts, or would it need to be a 300 kilowatt split?
That is an eligible configuration. The difference is that 150 kilowatts that can only charge 1 vehicle at a time, we consider that a single port, so it would only be eligible for one $55,000 funding reservation. And the 300 kilowatt split, I'm assuming that's a dual port, so that would be eligible for 2 of the $55,000 funding reservations. So that both of those are eligible, but for different amounts of funding. and you do still need to meet that minimum port count per site.
And just to remind everyone, I think we had a slide talking about ports versus connectors. And again, a connector is what you're going to see on the outside of the charger at the end of a cable that you plug into your car. Those are connectors. The ports are going to be items, pretty much a switch inside of the charger that you're not going to see. So really make sure that you understand those when you're talking about this with your supplier for your chargers.
And Fidel, one more for you here. If a charger or switchgear were purchased before 2025, are they still considered eligible costs?
No, so those wouldn't be considered eligible costs. You would still be able to use them in your installation and receive an incentive for the site, but the costs for those specific chargers and switchgear wouldn't be eligible to receive payment on.
Fidel, can you quickly talk about the bulk purchase situation, where if someone had bought a whole bunch of things, how they verify that for one project essentially?
Sure. I'm actually not fully familiar with those details, but we do have someone on our team that is. So
Yeah,
I'd be happy to help follow up with that question.
Yeah, I'd say we have a resource on the CALeVIP website about invoicing procedures, which does discuss bulk purchases, where we just recommend you reading that invoice under document library, that resource about bulk purchases. Sorry.
Okay, next question for you, Brian. Can we apply for a Communities in Charge Level 2 application and a CALeVIP DC Fast application for the same site?
So if there is a project under Communities in Charge active, you're welcome to apply. We do not allow simultaneous participation for a single site. So if you want to do both technologies, you'll need to do one program and then apply for the other. So you can, again, not simultaneously participating in both programs in a single site. But if you finish one and want to apply for the other, that's fine. We encourage you to probably do stub outs and trenching while you do one, so you can apply to the other, and then just come in and drop the chargers in and speed it up.
Fidel, a question for you on equipment. If someone would like to register new EVSE equipment for the project, how much time would it take to be part of the eligible list once submitting all supporting documents?
Yeah, so review of the equipment doesn't take very long, depending on the complexity of the model and the distributed nature of some of these DCFC units. Aligning on the listing might be the main chunk of time that we spend discussing. But once everything's dialed in, it's a fairly quick process. I would say 1, maybe 2 weeks at the most. And we do update our eligible equipment dashboard every 2 weeks. Same with the coming soon list. We update those every 2 weeks. I think the main barrier on the front end will be ensuring you have all of your certifications. So sometimes people apply and don't have all of these certifications for the equipment. So that's where some of the delays can come in, where now we have to wait for that certification to come through.
Moving back to Brian here. For eligible site types, do they need to offer free parking for drivers using the EV charging to be eligible, or can it be a parking fee?
So currently the IM does allow a fee to be charged for parking. Again, we don't want to discourage EV drivers by having it priced more than it would to charge than a gas car. But again, we similar to the parking permit requirement, we're going to be reviewing this, and if we have any updates, the IM will be updated.
Okay, Fidel, for application assistance, what is the turnaround time for application assistance once someone requests it?
Yeah, so we will be responding to you within 2 business days. The resolution of whatever your issue or question is may take a little bit longer depending on how complex of a question or issue it is. But we do want to get back to you minimum of 2 business days from maximum of 2 business days from when you submit that form. And yeah, we'll be excited to help you with whatever issues you have and make sure we can do everything that we can to get your site eligible and in a good state for receiving funding. Yeah, please make use of that service.
Okay, and Fidel, can you give a little bit more information about any specific battery requirements to be considered eligible project costs?
Battery requirements. I assume that is referring to the
on-site.
On-site battery.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
there aren't any specific battery requirements that I can remember. But if you are planning on using battery, yeah, like I said, please feel free to reach out and we can look at it into it more closely and see if there's anything that raises a red flag, but there aren't any specific amperage hours or other output requirements that would deem it eligible versus not.
Okay. And then Fidel, one more for you. We are possibly planning to apply for 2 sites. One is in a low income community and the other is not. Should we apply per site or together? If we do them together, will this have an effect of the priority processing?
Yes, so the applications are per site. You can't apply for 2 sites at once with a single application. So you will need to submit those separately and they will be reviewed separately.
Okay, and this one can kind of be a combination of Fidel and Brian. Are city parks, parking lots, and parks eligible site types?
Parking lots, yes. Parks, no.
So if it's a parking lot at a park, it's no.
Correct. It has to be a city-owned paid parking lot or a free parking lot, but it needs to be primarily a parking lot and not tied with, the park or a separate business, ineligible business.
Yeah, and the way we review sites is looking at the primary use of the site. So if it's primarily intended as a public parking site and there's visual signs and documentation of that could be considered as a city-owned public parking lot. But if it's specifically for the park, not intended to be an amenity public parking lot, then that would not be eligible.
Okay, Evan, we're actually going to throw one at you here regarding the cap of total funding per applicant. So the cap is no more than 35% of FCCP funding. Is the 35% calculated on the funds available today or the total funds available for the program?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So it's the 35% is calculated off of the 55 million in total funds available. So In other words, no incentive recipient, no single incentive recipient can have more than 35% of that 55 million, which is about 19.2 million in funds reserved.
Fidel, are there any ADA requirements specifically put into site selection?
No, compliance with ADA is not something that we will be reviewing. That is the responsibility of the authority having jurisdiction. So if they have issued you a permit for your specific site design, we will take that and review the permit, make sure it is dated, signed, has that issued date, and that will be the entirety of the review we will do regarding ADA compliance.
Okay, one more for you, Fidel. I saw colleges and universities are eligible. Does this include public school districts?
Oh, sorry, was that for me?
It's Fidel or Brian. This is kind of regarding a technicality within the eligible site types. So public school district eligibility is the question.
Yeah, so public school districts are not listed as one of our eligible site types, only college university sites. However, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at the primary use of that site. So if there's another use that could be or is the primary use and just happens to be right next to or at the school district, that might be something that we consider. But broadly, no, the school district would not be eligible.
Okay, and Fidel, one more. If solar and energy storage are paired with the EV chargers themselves, are they eligible to be covered?
Yes, the energy storage is eligible costs if paired. The solar panels are eligible if they're an integral part of the DC fast chargers. This is primarily, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but the CEC has other solicitations for solar that they would prefer that you use and take advantage of. So any standalone solar installation should go through those solicitations and programs instead of this one.
Correct. Yeah, our funding here for CALeVIP is strictly for light duty EV infrastructure. So if the battery storage and solar are installed and directly tied to the meter with the chargers and not metered with your site host building, that is eligible. But if they are metered with the site host building, they will not be eligible.
Okay, Fidel, for you, does the utility service equipment, including transformers and switchgear, need to be dedicated to the EV charging stations, or can it be combined with the building on site?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say traditionally they're usually separate, just given the large power demand that they provide. But there's no limitation that they have to be separate. I think that's just the currently preferred way of doing it. So that is what we see the most. And I guess an additional add to that would be there would still need to be a guarantee that the ports would still be available to receive those the 150 kilowatt power delivery per port. So commingling some of those loads, we would have to look at the full expected load of the building and take that into consideration to ensure the 150 kilowatt per port. So it may get a little more complicated, but yeah, if that's something you're interested in, please reach out and we can discuss further.
Okay, and Fidel, is there a way to quickly confirm a site is eligible before going through the entire application process?
Yes, as part of the application assistance service, we do review site eligibility. So if you have a concern that your site may or may not be eligible, please reach out and we'll be happy to help you make that determination.
Okay, moving on here. If a site is in a paid parking garage, for Brian, if a site is in a paid parking garage is eligible, if fast charge users are not charged for parking, example, the first 30 minutes are free, is that still considered eligible?
In today's IAM, yes, IAM implementation manual, yes, it's required today, but again, we are going to be looking at this and see if we need to expand or adjust any of this paid requirements.
Okay, and Fidel, can you give a little bit more elaboration regarding the utility design required without utility upgrades? There's been a couple questions regarding that.
Yeah, you don't need to. Yes, and maybe this is a misunderstanding of the implementation manual. It is either or. So we require either you have gone to your utility, worked out any capacity issues with them, and agreed to the design of the utility service and point of service for your site. And the provision of that final utility service design is what we take as evidence of that. So that's one option. The other is you go through your utility, they say your existing service works great for your existing site, so you don't need to make any upgrades. If that is the case, then we just need a letter from the utility explaining that that is the situation. So it's not both, it's either or.
Okay, and then Fidel, regarding equipment, this is kind of Fidel and Brian combination of two questions, trying to get through a lot of questions on the list, but are there any limitations of using US made equipment or non-US made equipment? And then follow up, is the funding dependent anyway on any sort of federal rules or funding?
So there is no Build America, Buy America requirement in CALeVIP, and all of our funding here is from California state funds, not federal funds.
Okay, and then we have probably time for about two more questions. So going through the list really quick, try to find a good one. So if for Brian, if a community is in charge project is done by June, can an entity apply for a fast charger through this funding at the same site?
Yes, at the same site if they have not previously participated in CALeVIP 2.0 for that same site.
Okay, so for Dell, just to reiterate, there's been a few questions on this. What is the max port per site allowed?
Yes, so we will only consider 20 for the incentive cost calculation. If you want to install more, that is certainly your prerogative. And as Brian mentioned, please consider the additional impact that may have on the capacity you need to bring on site and potential delays that could cause to your utility design. So certainly encourage you to install more. Just make sure you're able to still meet the timelines.
Okay, and then just looking through the rest of the questions, there's a couple site-specific ones that we do encourage you to email us about. And if you do have any other questions that you do not feel were answered sufficiently, please email us as well. But with that, I'm going to pass it back to Evan to close out the rest of the webinar.
All right, well, thank you, Bailey, Brian, and Fidel, and thank you to the audience for all of your great questions. So as a reminder, please visit CALeVIP FCC page for additional information, and feel free to email us with any specific site-related questions or any questions that we didn't have time to address. And again, we'll be posting this webinar presentation to our resources library on the CALeVIP website under events and webinars. And just want to say thank you again for attending and participating. We are extremely excited for the Fast Charge California project launch, and we encourage everyone who has additional questions to reach out. Please take care, and we look forward to a great project here coming up in July. Thank you.